Hi everyone. Today we're going to explore 5 levels of feedback patching using your analog modules. Why 5? Well, it feels like a nice compromise between doing too much and too little. We're going to start simple with just a single module, and we'll add new modules at each level. There's much to explore with feedback patching, and it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with your analog modules. They're high quality, flexible, and feature open designs that really allow the user to experiment with feedback patching. My examples in this video are only a handful of the possibilities. I hope you enjoy it. Let's dive in. Let's begin with a single module. Generate 3, a through 0 FM oscillator. Let's see what kind of results we can get when we patch the even output to the through 0 FM input. I'll turn up the even level and a little bit of the through 0 FM. And I've learned that you can get interesting results when you turn the phase knob. I'm going to turn on the AC coupling so it filters out the DC signals. Oh, this is very cool. So we've heard some sounds that we could definitely use as a starting point in a larger patch, or even just to record to use in a composition. Let's try the odd output to the through 0 FM input. I love these kind of natural rhythms you can get with feedback and these variations. I mean, it's quite organic. Let's just try adding more cables. I'll send the even to the exponential FM. Try the reset or the flip. So I'm kind of making my way here to a patch that I believe is mentioned in the manual to create white noise, which is the even output going back into the phase input. And I like to find kind of like these delicate sounds that are possible using this patch that aren't just pure white noise. This is very noisy, but it's quite a complex sound. Let's see if we can get something even more, with even more variety or nuance. So I arrived at this sound, which I think is pretty cool. It's very noisy, but it has a sense of nuance and shape to it that could be worth exploring further. All right, level 2. Let's patch a filter in the signal flow. We'll use filter 8. Let's start by monitoring a low pass out. And we'll take one of the other outputs, such as, let's just start with another low pass out, back to the through 0 FM input. I want to quickly mention before we dive too deeply here that this patch is based on a concept by Ian Fritz called traveling wave chaos. And I stumbled upon this concept on ModWiggler, where there's a thread dedicated to it. And he has a whole circuit where he was exploring this concept. But he talked about later on, he found you could explore his same concept in just by using an oscillator. He mentioned a through 0 FM oscillator and a filter. And using it just like we are now, one of the oscillator outputs going into the filter, and then one of the filter outputs going back into the through 0 FM input to complete our feedback patch. So that's what we're doing here. I'll link to both the ModWiggler thread and Ian Fritz's website where he's talking about the traveling wave chaos in the video description. Let's try other filter responses. So let's listen to the bandpass out and try a different low pass. Let's try running the high pass filter back in. I've discovered that the high pass filter out really does give you a lot of interesting feedback sounds. And resonance makes a huge difference in feedback patching. All kinds of unstable sounds that lock into interesting rhythms are possible. Let's try monitoring a low-pass filter. bandpass plus N, or it's a BB plus N. I really like this one because it has the low end and the high end. We'll try the phase output fed back into the through zero FM input. Oh, that's really nice. And it's gone. Come back. So let's actually try now patching some of the filter back to itself. Geez, that's pretty nice. I really like this one. Let's try a little more feedback patching. Let's actually take one of the outputs and patch it right back into the filter input. It took me a moment, but I thought this sound was pretty cool for a more drony sound. Okay, let's see what we can get while we are silent here. Let's see what we can get by patching some of the oscillator outputs to modulate the filter. Maybe I'll trade this exponential FM out. I really like trying to find these more delicate kind of sounds. This one is pretty cool. Sometimes you can get lucky and actually stumble into these scenarios where you are pinging the filter. that's pretty cool. Let's add in one more element, the phase output back to the exponential FM input on the oscillator. Whoa. Lost it. Yeah, we lost it. And by we, I mean me. Sorry, everyone. So as you can see, we can get an enormous amount of sounds with just these two modules in feedback. I've simplified the patch a little bit to help avoid getting overly complex prior to adding in more modules. So let's review our signal flow. We have the full output of Generate 3 going into one of the audio inputs on filter 8, and what we are listening to is the bandpass out. Feedback-wise, we have the even output going back into the phase input on Generate 3. We have the high-pass filter output going into the through 0 FM input on the oscillator, and we also have the phase output going back into the exponential FM input. So we have 3 cables that are responsible for the feedback and 2 cables for our general audio signal. All right, let's move on to level 3. Starting with that sound, let's add in fold 6, a wave folder. Let's start by just hearing what we get by adding in the wave folder. It adds in more harmonics, and that, I mean, it's in this case, it's just making our sound a little bit more vibrant, more interesting. All right, let's continue exploring feedback. We'll take the alt out and go into the secondary input. Let's try taking the alt out and going to the other input on the filter. Oh, cool. That's a great sound. But you can kind of hear the original sound that we started with here. It's not all lost. There it is again. Let's try it to the exponential FM input on the filter. How about we send the fundamental output of Generate 3 to the fold CV input on fold 6. There are so many sounds we could continue onwards with, but how about we just choose this one? So what we've added is, of course, fold 6 into the audio signal path, but we've also taken the alt output, and that is being fed back into the exponential FM input on the filter. And additionally, we're sending the fundamental output into the fold CV input. There's a lot more we could do here, but let's move on to level 4. Well, it's time to move on to level 4, but before I do, I would like to quickly say that I'm recording this video over the course of a few days, and when I turned on the modular synth this morning, the sound that came on was quite different than what we had ended with at the end of level 3. So I played with the parameters a little bit and arrived at this sound. And I think this is a fine place to continue on to level 4 with. Okay, so I would like to add in 2 modules here for level 4, and that is step 8 and compare 2. I'm going to use compare 2, which is a comparator, to generate a gate out of this material, the oscillator signal. Step 8 does not need a hard edge signal or a gate to tell it to advance. It will respond to a variety of signals. However, we can use compare 2 to fine-tune the likelihood that a gate will be generated. So let's give this a try. I'll take the core output of Generate 3 and plug it into the comparator on the left. I'm just going to use one comparator here. Go ahead. Then I'll pass the output of the comparator into the step input on step 8. And let's just start there. So I'd like to see if I can just generate a gate that's not too fast, not too slow. So we can see on these LEDs, and by the way I've tuned these parameters to get a gate here, that this signal is kind of sitting in a low voltage, which is going to present some challenges. because our signal may not be fluctuating enough to allow us to actually have a gate that turns on and then back off. It's just going to hold high or just be low. So I might actually need to tweak my sound slightly, which could be challenging. So as you could see, the core voltage was kind of stuck at some negative voltage through this feedback path. And I had to alter the sound to finally get some kind of fluctuation in the voltage on the core output. But I think I can now work with this, and the sound is still pretty nice. So now let's see if we can get compared to fluctuate between high and low states. Ooh, there we go. Looks like it's crossing the middle point enough that I can get a gate or a pulse. Oh yeah. Looks like it's a little erratic though. See if we can fine tune that. Okay, it seems like we're stepping along in a way that we can work with. Sometimes there's an explosion of events, but I don't think that's too problematic. We can work with that. This sound has a lot of variety right now, and it might be so unstable that we kind of lose this altogether. I'm unsure, but I like the life that it has. So let's see if we can work with that. So instead of using the plus 5 volt normalization here on step 8, I'm going to use one of the outputs of the filter. In this case, the BB plus N. I have the switches set to cycle, solo, and sampling. Basically, I just want to sample the filter on every single step for now. So now it can be useful to consider, well, what parameters are really important to this sound? And can I create even more variation by modulating those parameters with step 8? So at first I'll start with the scan output, and I think even on generate 3 is going to be really important. And the volt per octave on the filter could be really important. Maybe we'll start there. And let's just take one fader, maybe somewhere in the middle, and turn it up a little bit and see what happens. Okay, cool. A tiny bit of variation, and that's what I was looking for. Let's try another slider. Wow. So the sound here is already quite varied and full of life, but we're adding just a bit more. What if we take the analog out for this particular step and make the resonance on the filter get more extreme? Okay, we'll have to fine tune this. Maybe it should be less extreme. Oh, cool. Just more variation. So I want to try something else, but I'm not sure what kind of results I'll get. I want to take one of the gate outputs. Let's try number 3 here, and plug it into the hold input on the filter. This may mess up everything or make everything completely pause, but let's just try it. We have to make our way around. I just missed it. Okay, I think it was maybe just a little bit of subtle change there. I'm okay with that. I think we can leave it. Let's just let it pass one more time to make sure. Uh-oh. Okay, we're all right. Whoa. Okay, let's work from here. So I would just like to quickly say there are all these switches on step 8. There's so much to explore with these modules and feedback. But let's move on now to level 5. So we've arrived at level 5, and I'd like to add in delay 1. Let's take one of the filter outputs and modulate the time input on delay 1. Let's use the delay out, which is the fully wet signal, to modulate the filter. And I'll use the linear FM input. I don't think I'm going to adjust that attenuator any more intensely. So I've been very careful here to not lose the essence of our sound, because everything is quite volatile with feedback. So, I think this is a good stopping point. I'd like to say that while these are quite abstract sounds, they are still inherently musical. There's phrasing, dynamics, and variation. In some kind of project, such as a recording project, you could record a really long take of this, and then tweak some parameters and record another take, tweak some parameters and do another take. And you could kind of sculpt a piece of music that way, or the start of a piece of music that way. We could continue to add other elements in the modular synth and build a completely self-playing patch. There's a lot of directions we could go from here. But for our video, that'll be it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to explore feedback patching with you. As always, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel to be notified of more videos like this. Goodbye for now.